welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from a realistic, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 113. This is the Week 12 preview episode where the Cincinnati Bengals at 3-7 go against the New England Patriots at home, who coming into this game with the best record in the AFC, tied with the Broncos at 9-2. New England Patriots are on an 8-game winning streak, and they are heavily favored in this game that's going to take place in Cincinnati. Patriots are favored by, currently it's about 7.5, depends on where you look, but it's been up and down in terms of the spread for this game, I should say, not the line, the spread. I don't know. This isn't a gambling podcast, so I apologize if I'm not using the right gambling lingo, but the point is the Bengals are home dogs, and that's not uncommon for the Bengals this season, even though recently, I guess except for this year, the Bengals have been pretty good at home. I think the Bengals are 2-3 at home this year. So they won some, they lost some, but they're looking for revenge against this New England Patriots team that, of course, beat them in week 1 of last season with Drake Maye, the one-and-done head coach who was getting Gatorade dumped on him after the game. And a lot of people point to that as one of the big everybody says, they only remember that the Bengals lost that one game, and they say that's the reason why the Bengals didn't make it to the playoffs. It's because that one game against the Patriots. They also lost 7 other games. They could have won. They could have just anyway. That's not the point. Revisionist history is very interesting, but the reason why this game is spread and why it was going up and down so much throughout the week. At one point, it was down to 6-point advantage for the Patriots. At one point, it was like 8.5 points. It's been all over the place because there has been some uncertainty about the Bengals lineup. Who's going to play? Who's not going to play? We already talked about one player, namely Ja'Marr Chase. We were pretty sure wasn't going to be playing in this game last episode because we had seen the video. Ja'Marr Chase spit on Jalen Ramsey in the previous game against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. Obviously, Ja'Marr Chase lost his cool, and even if it is Jalen Ramsey, who a lot of Bengals fans despise because of his history with A.J. Green, but I think a lot of people forget that Jalen Ramsey was playing on the Rams when they played against the Bengals in the Super Bowl. And that last play of the game, Jalen Ramsey fell down. Ja'Marr Chase was running wide open for the potential game-winning touchdown, but Joe Burrow didn't have time to get the ball out of his hands. There's history between Ramsey and Chase, and that boiled over multiple times in this game. Going back and watching the All-22 tape, you could see on Tee Higgins' touchdown catch, he caught it and took a couple steps into the end zone. It was already a touchdown, and then Jalen Ramsey came over and hit him like directly in the head, helmet to helmet. And you could see Ja'Marr Chase going up to Ramsey immediately after that. You couldn't see it as well on TV, but when you watch it from the All-22, you can see Ja'Marr Chase didn't really care for that hit. Then later, obviously, there was the big hit from Ramsey over the middle on Ja'Marr Chase where the pass was a little bit off target for Ja'Marr. He couldn't catch it. And then Ramsey took he took some liberties with the amount of steps he took before he laid a big hit into Ja'Marr Chase. Chase got up, shook it off, no big deal, but obviously he didn't really appreciate that hit in the back from Jalen Ramsey. So we all saw what happened. There was some pushing and shoving, both players grabbing each other's face mask. All of a sudden we see Ramsey swinging and going crazy at Ja'Marr Chase. We didn't see until later that Ja'Marr Chase got caught on video spitting at Ramsey, and some people were apparently blaming the guy who took the video of Ja'Marr Chase, and I guess saying that he should have just kept it under wraps and not told anybody about it. It's that's not what journalists, that's not their job. It's not to go there with the camera and then not show the world what actually happened. So everybody got to see Ja'Marr Chase spitting on Jalen Ramsey. Ramsey got ejected from the game, and he was fined a little bit less than $15,000 for unsportsmanlike conduct this week. However, Ja'Marr Chase was suspended for 1 game, which is unprecedented, and Ja'Marr Chase appealed it. The appeal was thrown out or whatever. The suspension was upheld. So Jamar Chase's suspension was heard, or his appeal was heard by Jordy Nelson, but they said suspension stands, even though it's not precedented for a player to be suspended for spitting. It's previously just been a fine. Even this season, in week 1, Jalen Carter was ejected at the beginning of the game. So basically the NFL kind of said, since he got ejected for the whole game, that's basically a 1-game suspension. Jamar Chase did not get ejected from the game where he spit on the player because the officials in the game didn't see it. Only after the fact, after the game, did anybody see it. So the league said, we're going to set a new precedent, even if that wasn't the precedent before. Apparently, this is a new thing of players spitting on each other, which we need to enforce. And I'm sure that there's probably been more instances of a player spitting on another player that weren't so vividly captured, and the player probably didn't get caught. But we don't want to see more players, this becoming a trend. The players' union doesn't want this. The league doesn't want this. The television broadcast partners don't want players spitting on each other. That can't be a thing in the game. So we got to get that out. I don't disagree with any of that. The difference, especially in Jamar Chase's case, is since he's so highly compensated, he gets paid so much, the fine for him missing 1 game check and his salary bonus is over $500,000. It's a very hefty penalty financially for Jamar Chase individually, but also for this Bengals team, because they're not going to have their best offensive weapon available in this game against the Patriots, and that's never good. The other thing that is kind of bothering me about the whole situation is that immediately after the game, Jamar Chase lied about it, and then multiple times he told reporters he didn't spit on him, absolutely not, even though the reporters at that point had seen the video. They knew he was lying to them, but he didn't know that apparently, and so he's just lied straight to their face and everybody's face. The reporters are the substitute for the fans. We can't be there in the locker room to ask Jamar Chase what's going on out there, so the reporters have to do it. So when we see the players lying to the reporters and the reporters' cameras and microphones, that makes us as fans feel like we're being lied to, and Jamar Chase is trying to pull the wool over our collective eyes. Obviously, Zach Taylor is bending over backwards to protect, or defend, I should say, Jamar Chase, and that's what he typically does with anybody. We saw it with Logan Wilson, was it last year or 2 years ago, when he had the hip drop tackle on Mark Andrews from the Baltimore Ravens, broke his fibula and fractured his ankle and whatever. And a lot of people were criticizing Logan Wilson, saying he was a dirty player for that kind of hit. And Zach Taylor came out and said he was, just so upset to hear all this criticism of Logan Wilson, and Logan Wilson does everything the right way, blah, blah, blah. Similar type of rhetoric from Zach Taylor, talking about Jamar Chase does everything the right way. He's such a great guy, and everybody makes mistakes, and he's upset that people are judging Jamar Chase so harshly off of one bad thing. And he's like, everybody makes mistakes, and we shouldn't just judge everybody off of their worst moments. I get all that, but it's not just the one moment. And then Zach Taylor said, well, he obviously Jamar Chase knows he can't make that, and that's crossing the line, and he'll own up to that. But the only problem is, up until now, Jamar Chase hasn't owned up for that. He's done the exact opposite. He did the appeal, and also he lied to the reporters and said he didn't spit on him at all. And since he's suspended, he can't be in the locker room. On Monday, he came through the locker room, didn't talk to reporters, just didn't have any comment to them. So he didn't say, hey, sorry, all I do, you guys. At that point, the appeal was still pending, so it kind of made sense to make no comment. But people are understandably, as Bengals fans, if he spit on a Steelers player, I think they're more likely to excuse it and say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And since it's Jalen Ramsey, we'll kind of excuse it. But I think no matter who it is, if it's a player on the Steelers or a player on the Bengals, or who, you just, in general, you don't want to see players spitting on each other, regardless of what team they play for or who you're a fan of. And Zach Taylor and a lot of people are saying, people are saying, I totally agree with Zach Taylor. He's right, which you're never going to hear me say anything like that, probably. So I'm going to have to disagree with Zach Taylor on the whole Jamar Chase owned up to it, because so far he hasn't. And my thing is, Jamar Chase has an Instagram. He's got social media. He could at any point put out a statement to set the record straight. Okay, this is what happened. This is why I did what I did. Take accountability, whatever you want to call it. But so far, we haven't heard anything from Jamar Chase, and he's eventually going to have to talk to reporters. I don't know what he's going to say, but he hasn't done anything all week to take any accountability, responsibility, say anything at all. And so that's why people are continuing to pile on and, have negative things to say about him. I'm sure outside of the Cincinnati fan base, the other fans for other teams are looking at Jamar Chase from the outside and saying, man, what a punk. He's like spitting on people. That's like disrespectful and dirty and just not what you want to see. And so it's not a good representation for the Cincinnati Bengals. It's not a good representation for Jamar. That's an incident that's going to follow him probably for the next few seasons. No matter what he does on the field, people are going to remember, oh, he's the guy who spits on people and then lies about it. So the Bengals have that going for them, which is great. And that means that Patriots defense, which has been susceptible to giving up points, is going to have one less thing to worry about. Obviously, T. Higgins has been remarkable. He scored a touchdown in 9 straight home games, which I think is a franchise record. He's going to try to keep that going, but obviously all the attention that was going to Jamar Chase, and they were double-teaming Jamar and T. Well, now they don't have to worry about double-teaming Jamar Chase. He's not going to be out there. Now they just have to worry about double-teaming T and then let whoever else beat them, whether that's Iosivas, Mitch Tinsley. Mike Gesicki is going to be coming back. He was activated off the injured reserve list from that pectoral injury. But most importantly, and I've kind of buried the other lead here, is the person who's not going to be coming back off of injured reserve. Of course, that being quarterback Joe Burrow. There was a lot of optimism this week because we saw Joe Burrow was practicing. Again, he got some limited practice last week, but they said no, he was just doing 7-on-7s. Got to wait until he gets into the full 11-on-11 practices to see how his body responds. And so, okay, fine. He didn't play against the Steelers, but even the fact that he was back out there practicing was much earlier than a lot of people had anticipated. We didn't expect to see him maybe till December. Here it is mid-November. He's already back out on the practice field. Then this week, he was out with the team in 11-on-11s, and he was listed as a full participant, not limited, full participant in practice on Wednesday and Thursday. So that fueled a lot of speculation, including me. There was a time this week I thought, oh, Joe Burrow's coming back 100%. He's full participant in practice. He's full speed, 100% ready to go. Nothing can stop him. They're going to put him out there. And this is really, if they lose this game, they're not mathematically eliminated, but if they lose 8 games, the best they could do is win out and go 9-8. And even then, it would be not great odds that they make it into the playoffs, even with 7 teams making it from the AFC. 9-8, you're not guaranteed to win your division or make it with a wild card. So I understood where there would be a lot of reasons to want to get Joe Burrow out there, but the other thing is, how was Joe Flacco feeling about this? And how was his shoulder feeling, especially? He took that hard hit in the shoulder that drew the penalty last week against TJ Watt and the Steelers, but he stayed in the game and he was able to finish the game. Didn't look especially sharp in the game. He was missing passes, not taking chances on some open guys down the field. He was looking more just for the underneath, like Chase Brown. But I think a lot of people are not taking into account how windy it was. Part of the thing that you probably don't think about when it's 20 mile an hour consistent winds, you're not probably thinking, okay, let me throw it deep every play into this wind. And it's hard to tell which direction the wind is going when you're just watching film. You can't say or can't see, is he throwing with the wind or against the wind? Because believe me, that makes a huge difference about whether or not you're going to try to make or attempt a pass more than 10 or 15 yards down the field. That's one thing. I'll get to that. I'll look at the weather for this game, but I think the weather is going to be relatively calm and mild in Cincinnati on Sunday. This is going to be another 1 o'clock CBS game called by the same announce crew as last week, Kevin Harlan, Trent Green, and Melanie Collins. One of my favorite trios of announcers, especially Kevin Harlan. And we saw some calls like the Darnell Washington plays. Kevin Harlan was going crazy on those plays. Hopefully we don't have anything similar like that happen with the Bengals missing tackles and getting stiff-armed like they were last week. But we are not going to see Joe Burrow in this game. They had up until Saturday at 4 o'clock to make Joe Burrow active off the injured reserve list, but they did not do it. They also did not activate Dejon Anthony, safety off injured reserve. He's been dealing with a hamstring ever since training camp, and they definitely need help at safety and at defense and defensive back. So it's surprising that Dejon still at week 12 has not been able to recover from that hamstring injury yet and make it back, but he's at least practicing. Hopefully he didn't have any kind of a setback. Hopefully Joe Burrow hasn't had any kind of a setback. So maybe we'll see Joe Burrow on Thanksgiving this coming Thursday against the Ravens on a short week in Baltimore. But it's going to be Joe Flacco starting the game. And it just goes to show how bad Jake Browning is. Even though Jake Browning was playing against difficult defenses, I'll give him that. The Vikings defense, the Broncos defense, they were pretty good. And he played against the Lions, which doesn't have a great defense, but the Lions are a good team. So he went up against tough opponents, but that just shows two injured guys, Joe Flacco and Joe Burrow, are still definitively better options than a 100% healthy Jake Browning at quarterback. The odds of Jake Browning being on this team next year are pretty much zero, I would say, but this isn't about Jake Browning. This is about the New England Patriots and how the Bengals can realistically even keep it close. Patriots, like I said, they are on a 8-game winning streak, and most of that has to do with the play of their second-year star quarterback, Drake Maye. He's playing some of the best quarterback play in the NFL this season. He's ranking up at the top in all the metrics, quarterback rating, and all that stuff. But he's also a threat to run the ball. But he's done a good job of avoiding big hits. That's something that maybe rookies, they have to learn is don't take the big hits in the NFL. That's something Jackson Dart for the Giants had to learn the hard way. He's still out with a concussion he suffered a couple weeks ago. But Drake Maye got a couple concussion scares in his rookie year. So far this season, he's been able to avoid that. And his accuracy is up. I think he broke the Patriots record for completion percentage in a game. It was over 91%, broke Tom Brady's record. So he was going crazy. I think he was like 17 or 21 or something like that. Or maybe, I forget. But he's been very accurate, ton of yards. His receivers are playing well. They got Pop Douglas. They got Stephon Diggs, Kyle Williams. Bunch of guys to throw to. Hunter Henry at tight end. And then the emergence of rookie running back in the last few weeks out of Ohio State, Treyveon Henderson. He scored 5 touchdowns in the last 2 games, including 3 in the last game. He had 2 rushing, 1 receiving, and he is a home run threat. He's had a lot of long runs, like 40, 50-plus yard runs where he's breaking away in the open field, outrunning everybody for a touchdown, and breaking a lot of tackles. That's going to be a challenge for this Bengals defense, which ranks second to last in the league in rushing yards allowed, and they're definitely number 1 in missed tackles. So it's going to be a difficult matchup for this Bengals defense to try to slow down Patriots running the ball or passing the ball. I mean, they're the last in the NFL in pass defense. They're last in the NFL in scoring defense. They're last in the NFL in yards allowed total. They're last in the NFL in pretty much every category. They haven't created a lot of turnovers. They haven't got a lot of sacks. They haven't really done much of anything defensively. So if the Bengals realistically have any chance to win any football games, they're going to have to score tons of points. And that's why not having Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase is going to make it seemingly impossible for the Bengals to win this game. I mean, you never know. Anything can happen, but the odds are not looking good. I'm surprised that the Bengals are only 7-point underdogs. But the thing about the Patriots is they haven't played an exceptionally difficult schedule because last year they were finished in the last place. They got a high draft pick this year. They got Will Campbell at left tackle. He's playing pretty good despite having short arms. But if we look at the teams that the Patriots have played this year, somehow they started off week 1 losing to the Raiders. The Raiders have fallen off a cliff since then. They beat the Dolphins. Okay, Dolphins aren't great. They lost to the Steelers in week 3. Steelers, not a great team, but they beat the Bengals. But then since then, the Patriots beat the Panthers, the Bills 23-20. Okay, that was good. I mean, they blew the Panthers away, not that far out of the Panthers' character. They beat the Saints by 6. They beat the Titans by 18, blew them away. Okay, the Patriots blew away the Browns by almost 20 points. They only beat the Falcons by 1. They beat the Buccaneers by 5, 28-23. And then they beat the Jets last week on Thursday Night Football, 27-14. Since they played last Thursday, that also means that the Patriots are coming in with that little bit of extra rest, a few days extra rest to recover from injuries. So the Patriots are coming in relatively healthy. Maybe the only big thing for the Patriots to be concerned about injury-wise is Milton Williams, their big offseason acquisition at defensive tackle. He's going to be out on injured reserve with an ankle injury. And then I think one of their other running backs, starting running back, Ramondre Stevenson, he is questionable going into this game, but he didn't have any restrictions in practice. I think he's questionable, but he most likely will play. But it's going to be interesting to see how these two running backs play together now that Treyveon Henderson has gotten a little bit more run in the offense. Maybe Ramondre Stevenson is going to be a little bit more motivated to show what he can do and show why they made him the starter to begin the season. But speaking of running backs, one of the other players who's going to have to step up with the absence of Jamar Chase, of course, is going to be Bengals running back Chase Brown. They don't have Samaje Perine again in this game. That means Taj Brooks, and Bengals also called up another player from the practice squad. Last week, it was Kendall Milton. Let me look at the Bengals. They called up somebody else. Hold on. Gary Brightwell. They elevated Gary Brightwell and Jalen Davis. I don't know. I mean, it's not like Kendall Milton. He had 2 yards on 2 carries last year and got stuffed on last week. Got stuffed on 4th and 1. So maybe they want to give Gary Brightwell an opportunity. They didn't really do much with Taj Brooks. He got 1 carry for 5 yards last week against the Steelers. He's their rookie 6th-round pick. Hasn't shown much of anything so far this year, but he hasn't really gotten an opportunity. I don't know why, but I mean, it makes sense to ride Chase Brown, but again, they need Chase Brown to have a big day, figure out some way to get him going in the running game and the passing game, and not have to rely so heavily on the pass, because with Jamar Chase out, they're going to have the clamps down on T. Higgins. They're probably going to take away other options like Mike Gesicki, Mitch Tinsley, Iosivas. This will be an interesting week to see whether or not Jermaine Burton is active in this game. But the fact that they called up Gary Brightwell and Jalen Davis and Mike Gesicki is probably going to be active in this game, none of these players were active last week, although Cam Taylor-Britt is on injured reserve with a foot injury. Zach Taylor is so weird. He wouldn't say definitively that Cam Taylor-Britt was done for the season, but he said he's probably going to have surgery on his foot. So I guess it makes sense. Joe Burrow just had surgery on his injured toe, and he's coming back earlier than expected. So you can't say anything for sure, but it sounds like Cam Taylor-Britt is not going to play the rest of this season at cornerback, and that's unfortunate, especially because this is the end of his rookie contract. He's out of contract at the end of this season, and He didn't play very well this season. He got benched multiple times, and now he's going out with a foot injury that's going to require surgery. Not what you want when you're looking for a new contract. But also, Cam Sample had dealing with an oblique injury, apparently, during the Steelers game. We saw him coming kind of lame, trying to chase Aaron Rodgers on that 3rd and 6 that he was able to convert and pick up with his feet. Aaron Rodgers' slow feet. But Cam Sample is probably going to be out with that injury. They called up another defensive end, Isaiah Foskey, off the practice squad, signed him to the active roster. So that means the Bengals are down quite a few defensive ends because they're already going to be out without Trey Hendrickson, who's dealing with that core muscle injury, sports hernia, whatever, back, hip, groin, pelvis, whatever it is. It's a hernia. Trey Hendrickson's not going to be able to play. Shamar Stewart, rookie first-round pick, continues to be on injured reserve. Cam Sample is out, so that means Myles Murphy, who did have arguably, or maybe not even arguably, but definitely his best game as a pro last week against the Steelers. He was making tackles. He was one of the leading tacklers on the Bengals defense. He got a sack. He got maybe even too aggressive. He got a couple of roughing the passer penalties on Aaron Rodgers, but at least he was hitting the quarterback. That's, more contact than a Bengals defensive lineman has made in a quarterback in a long time, penalties or not. Good performance out of him. Joseph Osai has played reasonably well, I'd say, but now that he's, not just a rotational guy, he's the number one starter. He's not necessarily the best at stopping the run. And so I think every team at this point should know that the Bengals are susceptible to the run. We saw the Jets get over 250 yards rushing on the Bengals. We saw the Bears get over like 275 yards rushing on the Bengals. Everybody and anybody can run on this Bengals defense. A lot of that has to do with the tackling, especially in the middle with the linebackers and safeties. And we saw a little bit more of Oren Burks playing at linebacker. They're still keeping Barrett Carter out there almost every down and substituting a little bit of Oren Burks with Demetrius Knight Jr., but we've still continued to see probably too much of these rookies missing tackles, not making good plays. And then the safeties behind them, Geno Stone and Jordan Battle, haven't played especially well, especially Geno Stone, who has looked like he just doesn't want to put his body out there on the line and make a tackle, even though what we found out through the podcast world was Darnell Washington, tight end for the Steelers. He's listed at like 265 pounds for some reason in the program, which is hilarious because he said he actually weighs 311 pounds. And Geno Stone, I would be surprised if he's much over 200, maybe 210, maybe at the most at this point in the season. He's not that big. So he's probably Darnell Washington probably has 100 pounds on Geno Stone. I'm not faulting Geno there, but he didn't really make too much of an effort. But he's not the only one. There's other guys like Josh Fig Newton, number 28 for the Bengals, hasn't been showing a lot of eagerness to come up and make hits or make tackles or get involved in a physical nature much at all. He's kind of been diving out of the way of contact a lot of the times, which is not what you want to see out of a guy who's supposed to be getting paid to make contact and tackle guys. So maybe that's why Jalen Davis is getting the tap to come up this week and play a little bit of nickel cornerback instead of Fig Newton. But whoever plays at quarterback for the Bengals, it's going to be a challenge for them to stay upright and avoid getting sacked, even though the Steelers don't have, or sorry, not the Steelers, the Patriots don't have a ton of quarterback pressures and sacks coming into this game. They've got 20 sacks as a team, I think, but it doesn't matter. Whoever the Bengals play, it seems like they're able to get pressure on the Bengals quarterbacks. I would say, considering that the Bengals are coming into this game with allowing 27 points in their last 9 consecutive games and over 30 points in their last 4 games. If they can just keep the Patriots to 25 points or less, we could consider that a huge improvement. Kind of how last week when the Steelers, who got their second highest, I think it was their second highest yardage total of the season, only trailing the previous game they played the Bengals. But even then, it was the Steelers only got 320 yards of offense. That was much better than when they were giving up 500 yards the previous 2 weeks, 570-something yards to the Bears. So I was that wasn't that bad, But, yeah, they got to avoid turnovers, and that's one of the things that the Bengals haven't been great at this season is the turnover differential. Bengals are 28th in the NFL with a -7. Patriots are 14th with 0. So they've given it away. They've taken it away. They've got 7 defensive interceptions compared to the Bengals' 8 interceptions. Let me correct myself from earlier. The Patriots come into this game with 24 defensive sacks, which is 16th, right in the middle of the road. Bengals are 31st in the league, second to last, with only 14 sacks through the first 10 games. And I think Trey Hendrickson is still the leader on the Bengals with sacks. I'll have to double check that. Yeah, Trey Hendrickson still leads the Bengals with 4 sacks, and he hasn't played in at least 3 games, I think. So Bengals defensively are not showing a lot of ability to pressure the quarterback, but we've known that. And so that's tough because Drake Maye, who's already been so accurate, he comes into this game with 2,800 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and he's just probably going to sit back there behind that offensive line with all day to throw, find the open receivers in this porous Bengals defense. And so I really don't know the game plan, what the coaches for the Bengals are going to do to be able to stay with this Patriots offense, because they're going to score points on this Bengals defense. I don't see any way, I don't know what tricks Al Golden could possibly pull out of his sleeve at this point to realistically slow down this Patriots offense, especially considering they've got Josh McDaniels calling the offensive plays. Not a successful head coach as we have seen in his multiple stints, but very successful as an offensive coordinator and play caller, schemer. He's able to find the weak spots in the defense and exploit that to great success. But if I had to make a prediction, this feels like a 10-plus point loss. I'll be surprised if the Bengals can keep it within 1 score. I hope they do. That'll make for a much more entertaining game to watch. But I feel like the Patriots are probably going to put up at least 30 points, and the Bengals will be lucky to get 20. I'll say 30-21. Actually, let's make it 31-21 Patriots. Give them a 10-point win. If the Bengals are able to score more than that, I'll be surprised. If they're able to hold the defense to less than 25, that'll be pretty good. But at this point, Bengals are 3-7. I'm not hoping for the tank, but if they continue to lose, I won't be upset because they're probably not going to make the playoffs anyway. And so you don't want to get into the situation like they have been in the last few years where they're the last team to not make the playoffs. They keep winning all these games at the end of the season when they're already basically eliminated, and then they just hurt themselves in the draft. I know the players don't think that way. The coaches don't think, let's just lose all the games because it doesn't matter. They're not wired that way. I understand that. They're going to try to go out there and do everything they can to win football games. But thinking, big picture, the Bengals have proved that they're not very good at drafting guys outside of the top 10 of the draft. So if they can get just one of those higher draft picks, it would make it much more likely that they'll pick good players, because they have not been picking good players recently, and that's why the team has not been very good. But at least it's going to be a better game than some other games like the Browns-Raiders game, a couple of horrible teams going against each other. And I'm rooting for the Raiders in that one because I want the Browns to continue to be below the Bengals in the AFC North in the overall standings. And because I just want people to continue to come to the realization that Shedeur Sanders was a fifth-round pick for a reason, and there was a reason why the Browns chose another quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, in the third round before they picked Shedeur Sanders. It's so amazing. You know, I go out in public and I hear people who are Browns fans still talking about all these excuses about, oh, the Browns didn't give him any reps, and that's why he wasn't any good when he went in for his first game. And now, you know, he's had a week to practice. He'll be so much better and whatever. I still think he's probably going to be not that good, especially if Max Crosby is playing for the Raiders. I mean, I can just imagine a player like Max Crosby is licking his chops, thinking about the opportunity to go against a rookie quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, who doesn't know how to play inside the pocket, doesn't know how to get the ball out of his hands quickly, and is kind of just like a deer in the headlights sitting back there without a whole lot of athleticism to be able to get away. And it's just going to be like some lions on the African savannah chasing down one of those gazelles or something. They're just going to be running all over Shedeur Sanders, probably get about 10 sacks in that game. So that's the only thing I'm going to be paying attention for there. The Ravens, looking around the rest of the AFC North, the Ravens are playing the New York Jets. They're probably going to get a win there because Justin Fields has been benched. They're going with Tyrod Taylor in that game. Steelers play at Chicago against the Bears. Bears are 7-3. Steelers are 6-4. Hopefully for the Bengals, the Steelers are able to win the Bears' win streak they've been on. Ever since the Bears beat the Bengals, they've been on a hot streak, winning games from come behind, like last-second victory every week. But that's what I would encourage other fans to do. You can do whatever you want, but this Bengals season, the way it's going, you might have to start looking around at some of those other teams and other games and think about who you want to root for going into the playoffs, because it's not going to be the Bengals, I'll tell you that much. But we've got, 7 more games of the Bengals left this season. Let's enjoy it, get the most out of it, and maybe Joe Burrow will come back and play some games. And whether they win or lose, it's always better to be watching Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase when he's not suspended and spitting on people. It's always cool to watch him have that chemistry with Joe Burrow, and maybe something cool could happen. They could, have amazing plays and be entertaining, and that's really what this is all about. I know there is that game against the Dolphins in 2019 where I was rooting for them to lose because they needed to lose to get Joe Burrow. That's really the only time I've wanted the Bengals to actually lose. So I'm going to root for them to win, but I am pretty confident they're going to lose this game against the Patriots. But crazier things have happened. Maybe Iosivas will go off and have 3 touchdowns. And like I said, who knows if Jermaine Burton is even going to play. He's been dealing with some kind of illness. Hopefully it's not the vodka flu that he's been getting on a recurring basis, but he hasn't even been able to practice most of the time. So we'll see what's up with Jermaine Burton. Probably not going to be on the team next year, which is a shame. But hey, maybe Charlie Jones will score another touchdown on a kick or a punt. I don't know. Maybe Ryan Rico get a good punt in there. Not another touchback like he has been doing a couple times this season. But a lot of things to watch in this game. The other thing is, of course, Mike Vrabel coming back. He's an Ohio guy. He played and coached both at Ohio State. And he's from Ohio. He's from the area just outside of Columbus. But I'm sure he's very familiar with the Bengals organization. So there's going to be a lot of reasons for Mike Vrabel to be up and ready to go and get his team ready to go. So I don't expect the Patriots to overlook the Bengals team. Like, you could say, oh, I didn't hear anybody calling this a trap game with any of these two teams, because I don't think the Bengals are even good enough for anybody to consider this a trap game. I don't think anybody is even considering the fact that the Bengals could win this game. So if they do, it will be miraculous. I'll say that. So hopefully, let's hope for a miracle, but I don't think it's going to happen. But we'll be back to break down whatever happens, win, lose, or draw after the game. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. I know if you're listening to this at this point in the season, you've got to be a diehard Bengals fan, or you just love somebody breaking down Bengals in way too much detail. So thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. We'll be back before you know it. So I'm going to leave you with a hoo-day and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.